I thank members for their many questions, comments, and suggestions. Madam, Minister Lui has announced our goal to increase the peak period transport mode share to 75% by 2030, a significant increase from 62% today. With as many as 3 out of 4 people taking public transport, we must significantly improve our public transport system and its supporting infrastructure, such as road and walking facilities. With your permission, Madam, may I display some slides on the LED screens?
Yes, please.
When I joined the Ministry of Transport last August, I tried to meet as many stakeholders as possible. I met public transport commuters, drivers, cyclists, motorcyclists, pedestrians, students, and retirees as part of the focus group discussion for the review of the Land Transport Master Plan and informal discussions which I hold regularly. I also visited the 2 public transport operators. These sessions helped me better understand our transport needs and the viewpoints of various stakeholders. I thank all of them. Many good ideas have been expressed in Parliament over the past few months, as well as in the various speeches that members have just made. I'd like to take this opportunity to share with you some of the plans and initiatives that we will pursue in 3 areas: road safety, cycling, and in creating an elderly-friendly land transport system. Let me start by talking about road safety. Safety is a key consideration when we design our transport system. Unfortunately, in 2012, we experienced the tragedy of 169 road-related deaths. Like all Singaporeans, I'm saddened each time I hear of a new road accident. It has prompted me to reflect on how safe our roads are and ask what more can we do in this area. Compared to other countries, Singapore has a fairly good track record in road safety. In 2012, our road fatality rate was 3.2 per 100,000 persons, an improvement from 3.8 in 2011, and lower than many other countries, as you can see on the slide. But numbers give little comfort to those who have suffered the loss of their loved ones. This is why, with every serious accident, we investigate and review thoroughly to determine if additional measures are needed to enhance safety at the accident location. For instance, under the Black Spot program, for locations with a high occurrence of accidents, LTA will implement additional road engineering measures to reduce the number and severity of accidents. Some examples include traffic calming markings painted on the roads and advanced warning lights to alert motorists to stop. LTA also has a comprehensive preventive program in place, such as regularly auditing the safety performance of roads, both during the day and night, to identify potential road hazards before accidents happen. I agree with members such as Dr. Janil Puttichari, Mr. Pitram Singh, that we can do more for vulnerable road users, particularly children and the elderly. Last week, the Second Minister for Home Affairs described a comprehensive Safer Roads Singapore strategy to keep our roads safe. In conjunction with this strategy, I'm chairing an interagency committee to specifically review safety measures on the road for pedestrians and cyclists. The Committee on Pedestrian and Cyclist Safety will develop an action plan for the next 5 years and will actively engage local communities and the people, public and private sectors. On pedestrian safety, the committee will pay special attention to the needs of the elderly and school children. Members such as Dr. Intan Azura, Mr. Alex Yam, and Mr. Peng Eng Huat, as well as members who have raised the issue of road safety for schools in the past, like Dr. Lim Yu Kiak, will be pleased to know that one of the very first areas that the committee will review is safety within the school zones. LTA and traffic police regularly review and improve traffic safety measures in collaboration with the school. We have already implemented several measures to enhance road safety near schools, such as the recognizable red textured road surface, additional railings, and the traffic calming markings. The schools also play their part in educating the students, as well as their parents, on road safety. The committee, which includes members from LTA, the Traffic Police, and the Ministry of Education, as well as the Singapore Road Safety Council, will build on these efforts. It will examine the possibility of reducing speed limits around schools, as some people have suggested, and providing additional infrastructure, such as speed humps, flashing LED lights, and more signage. We will also consider Dr. Intan's suggestion for railings at both sides of the road in school zones, instead of at the center divider. All this will complement the stricter enforcement stance that the traffic police takes at the school zones. We may start off with piloting some of these measures at selective locations to better understand their effectiveness. Our message is clear. For school zones, our priority is to ensure safety of our children. But we need to go beyond putting in more traffic schemes and measures at our schools. We need to put in equal effort to inculcate in our young a safety consciousness when they use our roads. So I agree with Mr. Alex Yam and Mr. Teo Salak on the need to review road safety education in school. Second Minister for Home Affairs has shared the traffic police effort to educate school children on road safety. We can certainly do more, for instance, doing road shows, as what Mr. Teo has suggested. My personal view is that we need to find creative ways to get the message across, especially to our young ones in schools, and I welcome any suggestions the public may have. In fact, the committee will explore customizing the safety message for different groups of road users to achieve greater resonance. Over time, we hope to shape behavior so that there is a sustained culture of safe and courteous road use. The elderly is another group we need to educate on crossing road safely. We have expanded the Green Man Plus scheme to more locations to give the elderly more time to cross the road. I will talk more about ensuring that the transport system caters to the needs of the elderly in a little while. More broadly, the committee will look into how pedestrian safety on our roads can be improved. Dr. Janil has suggested instituting a pedestrian safety first framework. I think by and large, this is the ideal approach, especially for places where there's high pedestrian traffic. However, in a dense road network like ours, where all road users share a common space, we need to adopt a balanced approach, where we place the highest priority on the safety of pedestrians and motorists, while still keeping the road network reasonably efficient. A good illustration of this point is the simultaneous right-turning traffic and pedestrian crossing arrangement, where motorists can make use of the gaps in oncoming traffic and pedestrian crossing to make a right turn at junctions. This is common international practice, for example, in countries such as the UK, US, Japan, and Australia. Dr. Janil has asked us to remove it for safety reasons, and LTA has indeed done so on a case-by-case basis after careful observation of the traffic flows and in situations where LTA found that motorists' view of the pedestrian crossing could be blocked. The right turn movements at these junctions would then be guided by red, amber, green arrow signals. However, I would hesitate to remove the traffic scheme for all locations, as this could result in an unmanageable build-up of traffic and may result in some impatient motorists resorting to reckless behavior to beat the traffic lights and ultimately put pedestrians at greater risk. As Dr. Janil himself highlighted, it is unfortunate that oftentimes it is human behavior that poses the greatest safety risk, not infrastructure. We therefore need to consider the characteristics of each road junction individually before we consider removing this simultaneous turning traffic arrangement instead of introducing a blanket rule. In cases where removing the arrangement is not advisable, there are alternatives to alert motorists. For instance, intelligent road starts that flash in tandem with the green man signal to remind motorists to give way to pedestrians. The committee will study these alternatives, but I would also urge pedestrians to practice basic safety habits, such as looking out for cars before crossing, even if traffic lights are in their favor. The best rules and the most sophisticated traffic control system can never deal with the occasional careless or reckless driver. Let me now respond to specific queries two members have raised. First, Mr. Baey Yam Keng asked about ensuring safety around construction sites in residential areas. LTA works with agencies and contractors to try to ensure that heavy vehicles accessing construction sites avoid areas with high pedestrian activity and schools. However, this may not always be possible, depending on the location of the construction site. In all cases, clear warning signs are put up around construction sites to alert road users of the movement of heavy vehicles. LTA is working with Mr. Baey to review the routes taken by heavy vehicles in Tampines. The committee will review Mr. Baey's other suggestion for a penalty system for employers and hirers of drivers of heavy vehicles and installing video recorders in all heavy vehicles. Secondly, Mr. Ang Wei Neng suggested leveraging on technology to be more productive in enforcing traffic rules to ensure safety and improve traffic flow. Since November 2011, LTA has conducted a CCTV trial at Beach Road and Marine Parade Central to detect and enforce against illegal parking, which is a safety hazard. The trial has shown that CCTVs are effective in detecting and deterring illegal parking and has helped to improve traffic condition in those areas over time. LTA will thus be expanding the use of CCTVs to more locations island-wide. More details will be released later. And LTA will continue to explore other areas where technology can be deployed to aid enforcement. The traffic police will also upgrade their network of red light and speed cameras island-wide to complement the employment of more manpower to patrol our roads. Collectively, these measures will help both agencies better detect and deter traffic offenders. Lastly, LTA will review Mr. Ang's suggestion on issuing warning letters before summonses, possibly for offences with minimal or no safety implications. Madam, next I would like to focus on cycling safety. This is a common concern among the feedback I have received and from cycling enthusiasts as well as concerned parents. I asked them for their ideas and I was pleasantly surprised that many of them have stepped forward to volunteer their time and effort to partner us in spreading the safe cycling message. Let me share two examples. A few months ago, Mr. Stephen Lim, President of the Safe Cycling Task Force, and I went to meet Madam Roslina Rajab, who had written on my Facebook wall about how her son nearly got into an accident with a vehicle while cycling to school. She brought along a few of her friends to meet us, and as a group, they felt that they too had to do their part to promote cycling. One of the things they wanted to do was to produce a short video to spread the safe cycling message. So we helped to facilitate the filming of the video, which they have titled Rolling Smart and uploaded on YouTube. Mr. Lim and the Safe Cycling Task Force also suggested that the existing signs alerting motorists to the presence of sports cyclists along popular training routes should be made visible. I've asked LTA to work with the task force on this, and they will put up these signs by the middle of the year on these routes, as well as several other routes that are starting to become quite popular with cyclists, for instance, in Tanjung Ru and in Yishun. While we can do more to alert motorists of the presence of cyclists, I've also received feedback from pedestrians, casual cyclists and motorists on the risky behavior of some cyclists. Dr. Jamal also raised this just now. One particular issue that keeps surfacing is cyclists who ride through zebra crossing without stopping to look out for oncoming vehicles, let alone dismounting. We need to remind cyclists that they too need to play their part to ensure safety, and will consider Mr. Teo Selak's suggestion of a dedicated public education budget to do so. LTA will also launch a guidebook on safe cycling tips in a few months' time and continue to try new ways to remind cyclists to dismount at zebra crossing. One initiative that we are trying out is painting new markings at zebra crossings, well used by cyclists. You can see a mock-up of this on the slide. LTA will trial this at 3 locations around Tampines starting today. In conjunction with the trial, LTA is working with the traffic police and local community volunteers to engage cyclists to encourage them to dismount at crossing. Where space permits, we will try out building separate mid-block bicycle crossing for cyclists. This has been done at park connectors, as well as 2 locations at neighborhood centers in Tampines and Simei. You can see them on the slides. Several more will be completed at Tampines and Sembawang Town this quarter. Mr. Teo Selak will be pleased to know that we will identify more suitable locations for such crossing in tandem with the cycling path that we are building. Few people I've met have suggested an on-road cycling lane pilot. In other countries, they are implemented as painted lines on roads with no physical protection for cyclists. We may not want to follow their example, given our heavy traffic situation and for the sake of safety of our cyclists. I seek members and Singaporeans' understanding on road cycling lanes that it would also affect the movement of buses, require the removal of street side parking, and expose cyclists to turning traffic if the lanes are not properly designed. That said, LTA is identifying roads where these issues could be overcome and studying the feasibility of trying out on-road cycling lanes along these roads. On the other hand, Mr. Ang Wei Neng suggested that we need to discourage young children from cycling on roads as they are particularly vulnerable. This is a tempting suggestion, but the more important point is that on-road cycling is risky, and no one, young or old, who is not confident of cycling on the road should do so. I'd like to thank Mr. Teo Selak for sharing with us about the Amsterdam experience. Indeed, our staff, together with myself, we have been trying to study the experiences of other cities. What I find is that there are many lessons that we can learn from them. Nevertheless, I realize each city or even localities have their own path, have their own journey in their cycling, building up the cycling framework, building up the culture, as well as the norms of road safety. It is important for us to note that there are countries whereby the people, by their development of the country, where many would have cycled before they drive. So currently, when they drive, they would understand how it feels like to be a cyclist. For some countries where the development has been so fast, many would not have the experience. So each country would have their own paths, and in providing for signs, signages, or even markings on the road, we have also looked at various countries. What we want to urge members and Singaporeans to understand that it is a journey that we need to go together. It is a journey where we have trials, where we should try. If it doesn't work, we will improve. But I hope members and Singaporeans would be open to try some of these ideas that LTA staff who have been working very hard over the years to see how they can have a balanced approach in providing the diverse needs of transport mode for our people. And looking at the journey that we have, I realize that it is a long journey. For many cities, they have taken 50 years or more to arrive where they are here today. My predecessors, like Mr. Teo Selak, and fellow Singaporeans have started the journey of safe cycling, providing the infrastructure for safe cycling and so forth. So we have started the journey, and I think we are going in the right direction, and I look forward to members' support. Indeed, based on my engagements, the cycling community agrees with me that off-road cycling is much safer than cycling on the road. Off-road cycling paths provide a safe cycling environment for a larger group of cyclists of different ages and competency levels. Hence, given the safety consideration, the government will prioritize resources to build more off-road cycling paths. To this end, we have made good progress in building cycling paths in 7 cycling towns under the National Cycling Plan, which is integrated with the rest of our transport plans. Dr. Janil, Mr. Ang, and Ms. Irene Ng will be pleased to know that LTA will finish building off-road cycling paths in Tampines and Sembarang this year. The cycling path network in the remaining 5 towns, Bedok, Changi Simei, Pasir Ris, Taman Jurong, and Yishun, as well as areas such as East Coast, Jurong Lake District, Marina Bay, and the Punggol Eco Town will be progressively completed by 2015. We will expand this program by adding 90 more kilometers of cycling paths to several more HDB towns, bringing the total network to some 210 kilometers of dedicated off-road cycling paths to about 16 towns, or more than half of all HDB towns by 2020. Our eventual aim is for every HDB town to have a comprehensive cycling network for residents to cycle to the MRT station or to buy their groceries at the neighborhood centers. Coupled with the extensive park connector network that the National Park Board is building, we will truly have an island-wide safe cycling network for Singaporeans to enjoy. LTA is also studying the feasibility of building cycling paths at major industrial estates so that workers in the estates have the option of cycling within the estate and to and from the nearest MRT station. It will take some time for all the cycling infrastructure projects to be completed, so I ask for some patience and would like to assure cyclists that we are working hard to accomplish this. In the meantime, I've asked LTA to see if we can prioritize resources to quickly plug short gaps in the cycling path network. Avid cyclists have alerted me that there are opportunities to connect existing park connectors to MRT stations nearby, for example, the ones at Sengkang and Yio Chu Kang. These are low-hanging fruits that can be picked before comprehensive cycling plans are finalized and rolled out. So LTA will work with the local communities to close these gaps in the cycling network so that cyclists need not go onto the road or footpath to complete the final leg of their journey to reach the MRT station. In the long term, the cycling paths that LTA is building will be well integrated with the park connectors. Next, there has been requests to allow foldable bicycles on the public transport system beyond the current hours, especially during the morning pre-peak window. This will enable cycling to effectively close that last mile connectivity gap for trips to work. I support this idea. The challenge is for us to find the right cut-off timing in the morning, such that the foldable bicycles do not add to our morning peak hour crowds. We will study this carefully. To facilitate the ease of cycling as a first and last mile mode of transport, we will build more bicycle racks at our MRT stations. Last year, we announced that we will be building 2,400 racks at 20 MRT stations. They have been favorably received, and we will build another 600 racks at 12 more MRT stations by the third quarter of next year. Dr. Janal and Mr. Ang Wei Neng proposed for more secure bicycle parking around HDB estates, especially at void decks. Mr. Ang also suggested using closed circuit TV or CCTV cameras to monitor these bicycle racks. Most of these racks are provided by the town councils, but community groups are also stepping forward. I was happy to hear Senior Minister of State for National Development, Mr. Lee Yi-shan, speak earlier on in Parliament that Yuhua residents are coming together to discuss the provision of secured bicycle parking facilities within their estate to support the 24 kilometers of cycling paths in Jurong Town. We should also be able to gain some useful ideas to design secured bicycle parking from those submitted by the public for the ongoing Bicycle Bay design competition jointly organized by the Singapore Police Force and the National Crime Prevention Council. For those who do not own bicycles or would prefer the convenience of using bicycles for one-way trips, LTA is planning a pilot bicycle sharing scheme like those in other cities. Currently, the plan is to conduct a pilot at the Jurong Lake District, which will have a comprehensive network of cycling paths by end 2015, and a mix of different land users that will provide strong demand for the shared bicycle throughout the day. We will request proposals from the industry in the coming months. We will also consider piloting bicycle sharing in one of the cycling towns if there's interest from the community and members here. With all the above initiatives, I expect cycling to become even more popular as a mode of transport in the future. I welcome members who have been advocates of cycling, like Ms. Irene Ng, Mr. Teo Salak, and Dr. Janil, to continue this journey with us. Before I wrap up on cycling, let me briefly address Mr. Patrick Tay's suggestion to license bicycles to curb offences and Mr. Teo Salak's suggestions on some of the areas. Mr. Teo has also spoken to me about the mandatory highway code training session, which he feels would effectively require the licensing of bicycles. We used to license bicycles, but stopped in 1982 because it was too onerous for bicycle owners, especially those who cycle only for recreational purposes and not as a mode of transport. Furthermore, licensing would need to be coupled with adequate enforcement to be effective. As licensing is neither practical nor cost-effective, it is something we do not think is needed for now. Other countries, such as the US and the UK, have adopted a similar position. I also note Mr. Tay's point on sharp spikes in crowding on our public transport system due to foreign workers from dormitories. A survey conducted by the Ministry of Manpower and the Migrant Workers Centre in 2011 showed that most employers provide dedicated transport for their foreign workers, and that less than 15% of foreign workers living in dormitories take public transport. Nevertheless, we understand that there are certain localized bus routes and areas where public transport overcrowding is more acute. An interagency panel, including the Ministry of Manpower and the Ministry of National Development, is working closely with stakeholders, including dormitory operators and employers, to consider practical solutions. Lastly, I would like to take a look at the future of our transport system. As our population ages, the needs of our elderly will become more acute. We will need to ensure that they will be able to move around easily, not just around transport nodes, such as MRT station and bus interchanges, but also around our roads and public places, as Mr. Heng Chee Hao had emphasized. The transport sector must play our part to make it easier for seniors to pursue active aging. We are making good progress in improving the barrier-free accessibility of our transport system. All our MRT and LRT stations are barrier-free, and soon all our bus interchanges will be too. Half of our public buses are already wheelchair accessible, and by 2020, all of them will be so. To enable the elderly to navigate our roads more easily, we have started to install lifts at selected pedestrian overhead bridges. Mr. Lim Biao Chuan and Mr. Ang will be pleased to know that lifts at 6 bridges will be completed by the end of the year, and we will build lifts at about 40 more bridges. LTA plans to build the lifts in batches of about 6 each. Tenders will be called this quarter for the first batch of overhead bridges near Admiralty, Boon Lay, Lakeside, Marsiling, Outram Park, and Serangoon MRT stations. These bridges were chosen because they are near major transport nodes and key amenities and are used by many people daily. And because in this area there is no barrier-free alternative nearby. Tenders for the second batch of lifts will be called next quarter. Beyond these plans, we need to take a more comprehensive look at how our transport system can cater to the needs of the elderly. I agree with Mr. Heng that we should work with other agencies to study their needs, especially in estates where they are significantly higher in numbers, and expand existing programs such as the lift at overhead bridges, as Mr. Lim Bao Chuan had asked for, or pilot innovative solutions where we can. We are also mindful that the little things matter for the individual's travel experience. LTA has been working closely with the Ministry of Health, HDB, and the community to make land transport infrastructure more elderly-friendly in the city for all ages pilot projects in Marine Parade, Bedok, Whampoa, and Taman Jurong. For example, LTA will smoothen out uneven parts of pavements where the elderly may run a risk of tripping. In Marine Parade, LTA has also piloted elderly-friendly bus stop seats with the hand grips for the elderly to support themselves when getting up from their seat, as well as bus panels with larger fonts so that elderly can read them easily. These elderly-friendly improvements came about because residents, young and old, had proactively offered suggestions to us based on their daily travel experience, and I thank all of them. Madam, I've outlined several ways by which we intend to make our transport system safer, more accessible, and more inclusive. Through the feedback sessions and channel, I've come to realize that there are many diverse needs of Singaporeans that the public transport has to fulfill. In the past, when Singapore was developing, we had to make difficult choices as we could only afford the most cost-efficient public transport system. We had to prioritize our scarce resources and make sure that the needs of the masses were taken care of first. Today, we can afford to do a bit more. For example, in making our buses and trains barrier-free and building more cycling paths, and we will certainly do so. Moving forward, we will continue to meet as many stakeholders as possible, engage them in a dialogue to understand their concerns, and from there, work with them to develop and prioritize solutions that can best meet their needs. I hope that Singaporeans will work together with us to improve our transport system. Thank you.